One of the hardest things to deal with as a Photopass photographer at Walt Disney World, but also one of the best, was the Make-A-Wish kids. When you work as a Photopass photographer at Walt Disney World, you get to deal with all sorts of people from all around the world and all walks of life. Everything you can imagine. Singles, kids, adults, elderly, and just this huge mix of people. And you get to witness some incredible moments. You also run into some moments that are a little bit difficult, and some you really have to adapt on the fly with. A lot of times, those kinds of moments would come with a special group of people. You had a number of people who would come to Disney because of disabilities, and Disney being very accommodating to disabilities. Sometimes they would have to come through the regular line. Sometimes the pass would allow them to skip the line. We had no say on that, so don't ask me who gets to skip. It wasn't up to me. That's guest relations' job. We would get to see all these people get to come and experience incredible moments with characters. When you would see somebody come up with special needs, you often knew that it was going to be a memorable encounter. It was usually going to be a really neat moment. But there was a group of people who came through with special needs that were just kind of above and beyond. And that was the people that came through with Make-A-Wish or other similar organizations. These are kids that have been dealing with some sort of life-affecting illness, sometimes life-threatening illnesses, things that just greatly affected them. And it could be a huge variety of things you didn't always know. One of the things that Disney did with Make-A-Wish and other organizations was it allowed them to skip the line. They would get a special pass from guest relations when they had registered that allowed them to bypass a lot of the lines. And they would also get special buttons, especially if they stayed at Give Kids the World Village, that marked them as a Make-A-Wish kid. We could see those buttons as they came up in line, and we knew immediately that, hey, here's a family that we want to mark out, make a special moment for. Characters would spend a little more time with the Make-A-Wish families, and if we saw it, then the photographers or the attendants, depending upon who was where and what was going on, would then let the rest of the line know, hey, folks, wait just a minute. We've got a very special family coming up, and we want to make sure they get their moments. If they didn't understand right away, then we may have to say, look, this is a Make-A-Wish family. The vast majority of guests were very understanding, very happy to step aside and say, oh, please, let them go ahead. You would run into a couple here and there that were kind of cranks. Why do they get to skip the line? I ought to be allowed to skip the line. I don't understand. And usually with them, it was trying to explain briefly, hey, they're here with Make-A-Wish. These kids have been going through some sort of illness, and as a way to help make this special and help them to forget about it, we're letting them bypass the line. Well, and then if they were really a crank, well, I'm here to make my day special, and I ought to be allowed to... And then I'd kind of have to turn around to them and say, look, sir, because it was almost always guys. If you really want to go through what they're going through so you can have the privilege of skipping the line, you want to deal with years of cancer or physical illness or other things so that you can have one 10-second moment, that's really kind of a trade-off that you need to think about a little bit. In the meantime, because they've been going through it without a choice, I'm going to bless them. That would usually pretty much shut them up and put an end to it. And if it didn't, then usually the guests behind them in line would start getting onto their case because they were being such a jerk. The nice thing was that was very rare. That was like maybe 1 in 100 guests, and other people put them in their place, and hey, you'd be done with it. The vast majority of guests completely understood what Make-A-Wish was, what these kids were going through. Very happy to let them come up. And you couldn't always tell what the kids were going through. If there's a kid coming through with cancer and they're wearing a wig, you probably wouldn't recognize it. There's a lot of times that they would be going through things that you couldn't see. But that wasn't our job to sit there and differentiate and, did they deserve it or not or whatever. If they had a Make-A-Wish button, you assumed that they were going through something that was probably very hard, not just for them or for the family. Other times, it was painfully obvious what they were going through. You would see kids come up in motorized wheelchairs, and occasionally in the worst cases you would actually see them come up on kind of an abbreviated stretcher bed that let them sit up a little bit. You would see kids come up with IVs attached sometimes, and sometimes just in terrible shape. Other times you wouldn't have any clue they were sick. But for every single one of them, we made an extra effort and an extra moment to let them have this incredible opportunity to hopefully forget about what they were going through, to forget about what they were suffering. The characters always knew when the Make-A-Wish kids came up that it was kind of an above and beyond Call of Duty, but they enjoyed that. For several of the characters I talked to, that was kind of the highlights of the day, was being able to reach out and touch bases with these kids. You would see the kids come up and look the characters in the eye and begin to talk. If it was a face character, of course, they were talking back. And the kids may share their story with the character. They may talk about the character's story. Sometimes they just talked. What's your favorite ice cream? What's been your favorite ride here at Disney? And the conversations could go all sorts of different directions. You would see some kids just walk up and they would just grab onto the character and just hold on and not want to let go. There were times that you'd see kids cry. A lot of times, standing where I was, I would begin to cry behind the camera. I would oftentimes end up kind of standing right by the parents or the other family members. While I'm watching and taking pictures, I would oftentimes begin to hear bits and pieces of the story. It wasn't unusual for me to hear how whatever character they were with had been the character that had kind of inspired them while they were sick and kept them going, that they looked at this character as inspiration. And then, of course, you start hearing that and you start crying all the more behind the camera. Just to hear how these characters and these stories could give the kids a reason to keep going when they were going through so much. And then, of course, the characters are hearing this, and I don't know how on earth some of these characters kept it together. I didn't behind the camera, and I'm shooting, and they're right there interacting. It was like, oh my goodness. Some of the characters are my heroes because of that, because they were able to love on these kids so much. It was always amazing to me how much of an impact just those moments could have on the kids, on their families, as well as on us. Talk in one of my other videos about the girl who came in that we knew was sick and we'd closed down Toontown for her. But I saw several other opportunities and moments where characters would just go above and beyond and just pour love out upon these kids. When they would come in a wheelchair or in the improvised beds and other things, you would see characters that would bend down and hug around the chair and the bed to be able to hold on to them. I saw more than once kids that would have a hard time walking insist on getting out of their chair and walking to the character because of the impact that this character had had on them. You would hear the stories sometimes of what the families go through, because sometimes just as a way for them to deal with it, to be able to share with us what they were going through and kind of build a bond that way would help encourage them and lift them up. And then, of course, other people in line would hear that story, and you'd end up sometimes with like 20, 30 people all crying because they're watching these incredible moments. I can still remember, in fact, one of those jerks who would pitch the fit, and then the family started sharing, and he started watching, and I'll never forget this. It was out at World Showcase Lagoon, and I believe it was Aurora that we were with, Aurora or Belle. They had been loving on the kid, and the family had shared a little bit, and this guy who had been complaining quite a bit, actually, walked up after they had been with the character for a couple minutes. And I remember he walked up to the parents and he says, you know what, I need to apologize. I was way out of line, and this is such a beautiful moment, and I was such an idiot, and I am so sorry. Please forgive me for that. And it was neat to be able to see that moment and how something so hard for this family could turn around and soften up somebody else who had obviously had some other issues. Make-A-Wish, for me, was probably one of the best parts of the job. It was so hard because you're watching these moments and you see these kids and these families that struggled and suffered so much, and you can't help but cry. And yeah, I cried a bunch. But at the same time, it was such an encouraging and uplifting moment. I don't know too many characters and photographers who didn't love when Make-A-Wish came around. Yes, it was hard emotionally, but oh goodness, what an uplifting moment and so encouraging. And some of these kids would just light up your world. You'd see these kids that have been going through so much and suffering so much, and then they come around and they start encouraging you because they're like, hey, I made it through this. If I can make it through, you can make it through what you're going through. And you just walk out going, man, that kid was awesome. We loved when Make-A-Wish came around. We loved when they really, they've changed our day. One of the things I used to tell people when I worked at Disney is that if I hadn't cried several times behind the camera that week, it had been an off week. And the vast majority of the time when I was crying behind the camera, it was because of Make-A-Wish. There were some other moments too, but that was the biggest one, just to be able to get this incredible opportunity and honor to be able to have a moment with that, to witness it, to have a small role being able to take the pictures. Because when these families would come up, I really would adopt the thought pattern that if this is my family, how would I want the pictures? And I tried to do that with every guest anyways, but especially with Make-A-Wish. When you would see kids that would be incredibly ill, and in the back of your mind you're going, well, I don't know if this kid's going to make it. If this was the last photos that this family ever had, what would I want? And I would do my absolute best to make sure that I would get those photos, to capture those moments of the love between the kids and the characters and the interactions, to make sure that the family could remember, to get pictures of the whole family. Every now and then you would get a family that the family would kind of want to stay back and just let the kid enjoy the moment, and you'd almost have to encourage them, come on, this is for everybody. Yes, they might be the ones sick, but all of you were going through this together as well. So come in, enjoy this whole moment as a family, and try to capture that moment. And the characters are great for pulling in family members, because they would see mom or dad or others off on the side crying themselves because they were enjoying watching this moment and how touched they were. And then the characters come over and love on them as well. I saw many a parent cry on Mickey and Minnie's shoulder over what was happening with their kid. What a privilege, what an honor to be able to see and experience that. It honestly, like I said, it was some of my favorites. Even when I go to the parks now, I love to look and watch for those kinds of moments. It carried over even to Silver Dollar City. Silver Dollar City didn't see as many Make-A-Wish kids, but when we saw them, it was our goal to, okay, we're going to light this kid's world up. We want to make it magical, and let's make him the engineer for the day and let him go up and spend some time with the engineer or conductor and let him yell all aboard. What can we do to make this special for the kid and for the family as well? And so, yes, it was hard, but it was also wonderful. And the best thing, and it would be the moments at the end of the day that you would go home and say, I am so glad I got to see this. I'm so glad I got to experience that. That one moment, even if the whole rest of the day had been bad, that moment would more than make up for it, which is really cool when you figure I almost never had a bad day, and then I would have several of those moments over the course of a day. It's why I love the job. If you want to know more about Make-A-Wish, I encourage you to check them out. They are a fantastic organization doing incredible work. Give Kids the World Village is down in Kissimmee as well. They host a lot of the Make-A-Wish kids there so they can stay free. They're also both great opportunities and organizations to volunteer with. So I'd encourage you to check them out. Thanks so much for hearing stories about some of my favorite guests, some of the hardest ones to work with, but also the ones that I wouldn't trade, have seen and experienced them for anything. Hope you enjoyed this little look at part of what made working at Disney so great. I'd love to hear your comments, feedbacks. Were you part of Make-A-Wish? Did you ever get to experience it from that side? Or did you just get to witness somebody else going through? I'd love to hear your stories. Please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that as well. Thank you as well to my patrons for all your support. You guys rock, and I couldn't do this without you. And thank you so much for watching. God bless. If you want to know whenever I have a new video out, well, hey, make sure you hit that button right there and subscribe. If you want to see another video right now, well, I've got a great one right here for you. And if you want to be like these wonderful people here and help support me financially on Patreon, well, check out that link right there and it'll take you to it. Thanks so much, and God bless.